depression test. Why should we test for depression? The thing is, you can be with a loved one at home and they are depressed more than they would care to admit, or they may not even know. You personally may be depressed and you're not aware. You are living in denial. You think denial is an Egyptian river. And you can't get people out of the pit where you live. Let me begin by saying depression is not a sign of weakness. A lot of great achievers have been depressed. Many great celebs committed suicide after battling depression. Arguably the greatest president in the history of the U.S., Abraham Lincoln, battled depression his entire life. Arguably the greatest premier of the United Kingdom, Winston Churchill, battled depression his entire life. As of today, in the last 100 years, 35 heads of state and heads of government have committed suicide after a protracted battle with depression. I mean, heads of state, these are great achievers. People with money, power, influence, who battle depression their entire lives. Yes, even great men of God have battled depression, and I want to give you just a few examples. Because in its strict sense, depression is an emotion of sadness. When sadness is prolonged for a long time, we call it depression. And when you're not careful, you will cross the line to clinical depression, where you need medical attention. And that's the primary reason we are doing this lesson, so that you may arrest stress from graduating to distress to depression. And let me just show you a couple of examples of great men of God who suffered depression for you to know this. You can be very, very close to God. You can be very, very close to God and still battle depression. That's what I want to show you in a few moments. The greatest prophet in the history of mankind, the greatest man of God that ever lived, save Jesus, is Moses. Undisputable. A man who God used to do miracles that are nerve-wracking, that beat the best films of Hollywood. But even after leading the children of Israel across the Red Sea out of bondage in Egypt, and after God using Moses to provide these guys with food, manna, he gave them wheat every morning to bake pastries and bread. They began to complain. We are tired of bread. We need meat. We had fish in Egypt and cucumbers and garlic and many spices. We have gotten tired with this monotony of wheat products. Moses could not take it anymore. In Numbers 11:15, this is what Moses said to God. If this is how you intend to treat me, just go ahead and kill me. Do me a favor and spare me this misery. These are suicidal statements from the greatest man of God to ever live. I've had enough. What was overwhelming Moses? The sense of responsibility. 2.6 million people were standing before Moses demanding meat. I have been to the Sahara Desert a couple of times. This is not a place to demand luxury. You take what you have. 2.6 million people are threatening to kill Moses, and he's asking God. If you read the whole conversation in Numbers 11, it's interesting. Do I have to bear this whole burden all by myself? What did I do to deserve this burden? It's overwhelming. I can't take it anymore. Kill me, Lord. That's the man of God, Moses. Elijah, after leading the greatest revival in Israel, destroying the prophets of Baal and Baal, all the gods that were called Baal, destroying the prophets of Asherah and idolatry in Israel, almost single-handedly standing for Almighty God, risking his own life to face the most wicked king in the history of Israel, King Ahab. After all this, and studying for God single-handedly, he receives news that Jezebel wants to kill him. And Elijah couldn't understand. How come God is not protecting me? After I have stood for him, what's going on? 1 Kings 19:4. I have had enough, Lord. He said, take my life, for I am not better than my ancestors who have already died. Take my life. Suicidal statement. What is he asking God? How can I be depressed after such a mighty breakthrough? You can be depressed one day after promotion. You can be depressed one day after your graduation. You can be depressed one day after your marriage. You can be depressed after experiencing the greatest breakthrough. Elijah was depressed, not because he was a failure in his career, but he did exploits in his career. Yet, he still borrowed depression. Job, the only man for God to give a personal testimony. He is righteous in all the earth. Imagine God bragging to the devil. Have you considered my servant Job, righteous in all his ways? But after Job lost his property, after Job lost his children, 7 sons, 3 daughters, one night, to a fierce storm. He wasn't psychologically prepared. These kids, none of them was suffering a sickness, at least to prepare him psychologically. One single evening as they were partying in their elder brother's house, a mighty storm struck and they all died. Then he suffered a disease that was eating away his flesh. He was dying slowly. He was in physical pain, emotional pain, material pain, marital pain. The wife had told him, curse God and die. It's over now. What are we living for? Job had had enough. And he said to God in Job 3:11, why wasn't I born dead? Why didn't I die as I came from the womb? I can't take it anymore. It's enough. Let me die. Job, the righteous man of God, battled depression. And mind you, he was righteous. Isn't that what the Bible says? You can be righteous and battle depression. What about Jonah? Jonah went to Nineveh and prophesied 40 more days and Nineveh will be no more. Every day in the streets of the capital of Assyria and the greatest city in the world that time. Yet God comes and tells him the guys have repented. I'm not going to kill them. I have forgiven their sins. Jonah says in chapter 4 verse 3, just kill me now, Lord. I would rather be dead than alive if what I predicted will not happen. I don't need to live anymore. These are suicidal thoughts. Why was Jonah suicidal? He felt embarrassed and shamed. He went speaking and prophesying in the name of the Lord, and God says everything you prophesied will not happen. Do you know what depressed Jonah? Because he focused on himself. He didn't realize it was God's reputation at stake. And I can feel him. Because he was God's voice, he felt his personal dignity attacked, his reputation attacked. If you don't believe me, just go on Facebook and tell the whole world there will be no other COVID case. And then we lose 10,000 people by December. It becomes very difficult to live with that. But Jonah was not faking prophecy. It is God who spoke to him, and God forgives their sins. And he said, this is exactly what I was telling you. I knew you are merciful God and forgiving. I knew that if they hear your word, they will repent, and I will be left embarrassed, looking like a madman. I can't take it anymore. Jeremiah, the man of God, was depressed. You know, he preached in God's name that these people are going to get into captivity. These people will be in Babylon for 70 good years. What did he get in return? In return, the priest in the house of God, the one who is supposed to know what God is saying, decided Jeremiah would be whipped in public. He was humiliated, completely in public. In Jeremiah 20 verse 7, he said, Lord, you deceived me, and I got deceived. So he says, look, Lord, I felt deceived. When you called me into ministry, this is not what I expected. I thought you'd protect me. I have been punished, thrown into the cistern, but right now, I'm being humiliated by your own priest. I can't take it anymore. In verse 17, Jeremiah 20, he says, because he did not kill me, the Lord did not kill me at birth. Oh, that I had died in my mother's womb, that her body had been my grave. If this is not suicidal, I wonder what suicidal thoughts are. And what's the message? You can be righteous, you can be a great man of God, you can walk with God closely and still be depressed. And now I want us to do a depression test. And I want to invite Dr. Gozi to take us through this test.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So my piece this morning is to take us through 3 parts. We're going to do the depression test. Then we're going to add up our numbers, and I'm just going to give you a few tips and give you a bit of an idea as to some of the things that you can do even while waiting medical attention, if that's what you need. Now, as a disclaimer, I do a mental health check every single week. I have a friend, and she will call me and say, hey, wellness time. So I do my test every week. So don't be embarrassed by it, or don't be overwhelmed by the fact. But this is fluid. Depression is fluid. So when you answer these questions this morning for me, I'm talking about this week, not last week, not 10 years ago. I'm talking about now. In the last 1 week, what did you do? What did you feel? And then you're going to give me those points. I also want you to be as honest as possible, because you're doing this for yourself. It's like a screening test. So when you walk into the supermarkets and grocery stores before we had COVID, you could walk in there and check your blood pressure, right? It was a vital sign. So see this as a vital sign for mental health. That's what we're doing this morning. So for those of you who are here, what I want you to do, if you have a piece of paper, you can use a piece of paper. If you don't, you can use your phone. There are going to be 10 questions with 4 options with each question. Our online church, you can use your phone. If you have a piece of paper and pen handy, you can do that. 10 questions. There are 4 options in terms of each question. So you're going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. When you see the first question, I will read it, you will see it, and then you answer the question as honestly as you possibly can, and you document that number. When we're done with all 10 questions, we're going to add them all up, and then you find a final score. And based on that score, we will classify you and then give you options in terms of what next, okay? Are we ready? Yes. All right. So question number 1. I have little interest or pleasure in doing things. It takes great effort for me to do simple things. So the question is, do you have little interest or pleasure in doing things? It takes you great effort to do some very simple things. Simple things like getting out of bed, simple things like taking a shower, simple things like getting a meal. And so your options is 1, not at all. So I do not have any trouble with interest or pleasure in doing things. Number 2, it says several days, but I'm going to give you 1 to 2 days. So 1 to 2 days every week, I feel that I'm struggling with just doing the little things of life, of having pleasure in those things. The third one, points, to give yourself 3 points. If you're feeling this way 3 to 4 days a week in the last week, your score is 3. And if you're doing this and you're feeling this way 5 to 7 times, so almost every day, your score is going to be a 4. I'm going to go over it again. It'll get easier as we proceed with questions. So 1 point, I do not feel this at all. 2 points, 1 to 2 days last week, I felt this way. 3 points, 3 to 4 days last week, I felt this way. 4 points, 5 to 7 days last week, I felt this way. And what is the feeling? I have little interest or pleasure in doing things, and it takes great effort for me to do the simple things of life. All right, everybody should have answered that question, whether it's on your phone, on a piece of paper, and that includes our online church. Question number 2, I feel down, hopeless, depressed, and feel very uncertain about the future. And this feeling down, a lot of times it's not associated with anything in particular. You just feel sad. You can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I feel really horrible, and I don't know why, and I don't even know what tomorrow is going to bring. So question number 2, I feel down, hopeless, and depressed. I'm very uncertain about the future. So if you don't feel this at all week, you get 1 point. If you have felt this way 1 to 2 times during the week, you score 2 points. If you feel this way 3 to 4 times of the week, you get 3 points. And you're feeling this way 5 to 7 times, that's almost every day, you give yourself 4 points. Are we good? Excellent. So question number 3, my sleep has been disturbed. Too little sleep, too much sleep, or broken sleep. Ideally, you should get about 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night. That's what we recommend. If you don't, you're disturbing your sleep-wake pattern, you're increasing your cortisol levels, and so all those things kind of affect you from a mental, emotional standpoint. So if you're someone who generally sleeps about 6 hours, you're finding you're sleeping less than that, you're sleeping more than that, or you're waking up multiple times at night because you're anxious or you just can't sleep, you're going to give yourself these scores. So 1, it does not happen at all. Your sleep is much the same as it's always been. 2 points, if 1 to 2 days of the week you find yourself sleeping too much, not sleeping enough, or waking up multiple times at night. 3 points, if this is happening 3 to 4 days a week. And if it's happening 5 to 7 days a week, 4 points. It feels like being back in school, huh? All right, question number 4. I feel tired, fatigued, frustrated, and you have little energy. All right, so if you're not feeling this at all, that's number 1, and you get 1 point. If you're feeling this way, tired, fatigued, frustrated, little energy, you're feeling this way 1 to 2 days of the week, you give yourself 2 points. If you feel this way 3 to 4 days of the week, give yourself 3 points. And if this is happening almost every day, more than 5 days in a week, you give yourself 4 points. So question number 5, without trying to diet, I have lost or gained weight. Some of us would actually not be too sad about that, but in this particular context, it's actually one of the things we look at when we're trying to assess depression. So if you're not losing weight at all, you feel great, you're doing what you've always done, you're maintaining your weight, 1. If you find that you are losing weight and you're not eating well or you're eating too much, 2 points if this is happening 1 to 2 days a week. If it's happening 3 to 4 days a week, 3 points, and it's happening more than 5 days of the week, that's 4 points. Now, we're talking about significant weight gain, because sometimes you may lose a couple of pounds a day, just because it's hot outside, you're not drinking enough, or you're drinking too much, or whatever. But we're talking about you not consciously trying to lose weight, it's just dropping off. So it's one of the signs of depression. Question number 6. I feel like a failure. I've let myself or my family down. So if you feel this way at all, you give yourself 1 point. I'm sorry, if you do not feel this way at all, you give yourself 1 point. If you feel this way, I'm a failure, I've let myself down, I'm not meeting expectation, my family expected more than this, and I'm not meeting their expectations. If you feel this way 1 to 2 days of the week, give yourself 2 points. 3 points if you feel this way 3 to 4 days of the week. And if you find that you're feeling this way all the time, more than five days of the week, give yourself 4 points. So for those of you documenting on paper, you should have, 5 numbers that you're going to add up. Those of you documenting on your cell phone, the same kind of thing. Our online church, keep documenting. We're getting close to the end. So question number 7. There are 10 questions, so we're almost there. I have trouble concentrating on things such as work, watching television, or even having a conversation. So your mind is everywhere, but not where it needs to be. So you can't focus. That's basically what this question is asking. So the first number 1, you don't feel this way at all. You feel great. You're concentrating. You're doing what you need to be. You're present in the conversation. So you're a 1. If you find that this is happening a lot to you, you would be a 4. So it's happening more than 5 days of the week. And if you're in between, it happens 1 to 2 days of the week, you're a 2. And if it's happening 3 to 4 days of a week, you give yourself 3 points. And it's basically just a flight of ideas. I'm here, but I'm not here. So 1, if it's not happening at all. 2, if it happens 1 to 2 days of the week. 3, if it's happening 3 to 4 days of the week. And 4, if it's happening more than 5 days of the week. Question number 8. I've been moving or talking so slowly that others could have noticed. So it just means that I am slow. Things that I would have done in a couple of minutes. I want to make a cup of coffee. I find myself dragging to be able to do that. It could be dragging to get out of bed to go to work, dragging with your basic daily activities of life. So, and you're noticing that that's what's happening, and it's becoming so evident that other people may be noticing it as well. So if that's not happening to you at all, it's a 1. If it's happening 1 to 2 days of the week, you give yourself 2 points. If it's happening 3 to 4 days of the week, 3 points. And if it's happening more than 5 days of the week, you give yourself 4 points. Coming to the home stretch, question number 9. All right, I feel guilty, I feel trapped, and I feel like I deserve punishment. Those are really horrible, dark feelings. So if you're having any of those, you're feeling guilty, you feel trapped, you feel like you deserve punishment. If it's not happening at all, that's a 1. If it's happening almost every day of the week, more than 5 days a week, that is a 4. If it's happening 1 to 2 days of the week, that's a 2. If it's happening 3 to 4 days of the week, you give yourself 3 points. And our last question for the morning. Now, these questions that are pretty standard questions, we may have worded them a little differently, but you can actually go online. It's a 10-point question, so it's something you can do every week just to see where you are in terms of the week. And like I said earlier, this is fluid. You might feel great on Monday morning and not feel so great on Monday night. So it's not a one-stop, one-time kind of thing. So question number 10, I feel like I'm better off dead, like some of the men of God we heard Pastor talk about earlier. I have had thoughts of hurting myself. So having thoughts of hurting yourself is important here, because if you start thinking about it, some people do proceed to actually having a plan. Some people never have a plan. Some people do have a plan. But if you've ever felt that I'm better dead, and you've had thoughts of hurting yourself, then you give yourself a 4 point if it's happening more than 5 days of the week. If it does not happen at all, you give yourself 1 point. If it's happening 1 to 2 days of the week, you give yourself 2 points. And if it's happening 3 to 4 days of the week, you give yourself 3 points. What is your total? Just total what you have there. You should have 10 numbers. Add up the 10 numbers to give yourself a total. Is everyone there? Online church, you can't respond to me. You can use the chat box, but are you there? Okay, so everyone's here. So if you have 10 points, which is the least that you can have, it's unlikely that you have depression. At least not last week, not in the last week. If you have 11 to 19 points, you should only have points, you have mild depression. If you have 20 to 29 points, you are depressed. And if you have 30 and above, that is severe depression. Now, 4 times 10 is 40, so the maximum number of points you can have is 40 points. This is where I come in. The reason why you test yourself is to see where you are objectively, right? I may not feel like I'm depressed. Some people don't even know what depression means. They just feel like I'm really sad. It's okay to be sad. It's an emotion. If you lose your mother, if you lose a job, if you've lost all your money in your bank because somebody went in and kind of depleted your accounts, it is a normal emotion. I would be concerned as a physician if you didn't feel sad. That's a problem. If you feel sad, it's normal, but the sadness goes through a cycle that brings you to a point where, yeah, a bad thing happened, life happens, I'm moving on. And a lot of times between sad thing happening and moving on, you have support, you have help, you do all sorts of things to get you to that point. However, if that continues, and it continues to begin to affect your emotional life, your physical life, your relationships, it becomes depression. It is a problem. That is not normal. And you need to be able to recognize that there is a problem, because if you do not recognize a problem, you will not begin to look for a solution, correct? Right? So if I think it's okay, everybody walks around feeling the way I feel, then I don't think there's a problem. So the first thing I tell everyone is whether it's an 11 or it's a 30, there is depression. Get help. Get help. You could get help from your pastor, you could get help from friends, you can get help from whoever it is at that point that you can reach out to get help. The second step is everyone in here should have a physician. You should have a primary care doctor. You should have someone you see for your regular checkups once a year. And as you get older, you may be doing more than that. Go and talk with your physician or the nurse practitioner, whoever the provider is. Schedule an appointment and go there. When I said to you guys that I do a mental wellness check every week, I wasn't joking about it. I was not. I have my friend call me and we do mental wellness check every Wednesday. She's someone I can be myself with. She's someone I can be vulnerable to. She's someone that would let me be me without the expectations that have been set. I'm a physician. You can't be depressed. Oh, hell yes, I can be depressed. Because I'm human. I go through things. In COVID, I experienced depression like no one would know. I would sit in my car in front of the hospital for 20 minutes and I couldn't, literally paralyzed. If I didn't get help then, maybe I would have done something to myself. So what we're saying is, first of all, recognize that there is an issue. Recognize that it is not an issue that is peculiar to you. It doesn't make you demonic. It doesn't make you non-Christian. It doesn't mean you've lost your salvation. Bible talks about a garment of heaviness. That is depression. You wear it around. So get help. Get your pastor, your mom, your friends, someone you can talk to about how you're feeling. It's okay to be vulnerable. And when you've done those things, you need to see a physician, a provider. So I'm going to call Pastor now to come up and wrap this up for us.
Let me pick up from where Doc left. Seek help. There is something I have said here. I'll repeat the next 4 weeks. I'll repeat until it's in your system. You are never meant to go through this life alone. You are never meant to solve all your problems all by yourself. I've said over and over again, the enemy works by isolating you. Because when we are depressed, when we lose a job, we lose a business, we break a relationship, a marriage, we lose a loved one, we lose something important to us. We like building walls. Why? Because while we love fellowship, we fear being judged. While we crave for intimacy, we fear vulnerability. While we crave for friendship, we fear rejection. So, and the more the pain, the higher the walls we build. And this is what I have told you 1,000,001 times. In the jungle, when buffaloes are together, the lion can't attack. The only tactic he uses is to scare them away. Roaring, roaring. Once he separates them, one by one, he kills the buffaloes. The Bible says that the devil comes like a roaring lion, seeking whomever to devour. The enemy works through isolation, because if he can isolate you, he can plant seeds of despair and hopelessness and helplessness. So the greatest takeaway from what Doc is saying, reach out for help, no matter how difficult the spirit of heaviness. Say no to retreating to your own cocoon. Reach out, talk to somebody. You are never meant to solve all your problems all by yourself. There is no problem that is too big for all of us. Isolation limits creativity. Isolation limits imagination. Isolation limits solutions. When we are together, we can solve any problem. So we emphasize here today, depression is not necessarily a satanic oppression. You must understand that we are discussing prolonged sadness. Did you know even economists get depressed? If an economy is too sad for too long, downturn, it's on a decline for too long, a prolonged economic recession, we call it depression. And that's what we must understand today. We must seek out for help. Don't retreat. That's the trick of the enemy. The enemy masters on isolating you. Isolation leads to termination. I'll emphasize that until it's in your blood system. Trust me. Today there are some medical doctors who will diagnose Jesus with depression. And they have a right. I won't do that. But I want you to read the scripture. Jesus, he is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, familiar with grief, two serious emotions. Because what is depression? It's prolonged sorrow. And this verse is saying it was not a one-off thing for Jesus. It was not a one-time. He was a man of sorrows. This was like his life. Jesus didn't feel rejected. He was rejected. He didn't feel despised. He was despised. He didn't feel shamed. He was shamed, despised and rejected of men. That's him. And on the cross, by both man and God. Don't ever forget that. That on the cross, Jesus, for the first time, he didn't feel he was rejected by God. My Father, why have you forsaken me? That's him. A man of sorrows. But what did he do? He surrounded himself with friends when he was feeling distressed. Matthew 26:38. Then he said to his friends, his closest friends, the disciples, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Trust me, today's psychiatrist would diagnose this as depression. If you go to a doctor right now and you say you feel overwhelmed to the point of death, they will put you on medication immediately. My question is this. If Jesus could say this, why do we feel embarrassed saying we are overwhelmed? That's the question I want to ask you. This is the Son of God who could say, hey friends, Peter, John, Matthew, Bartholomew, Thomas, Philip, hey, this emotion is too much. I'm sweating blood. I need help. Watch and pray with me. Guys, I have been praying for you. Now I need you to intercede. They would sleep. What type of friends are you? Couldn't you watch and pray for me for an hour? This is my hour of trial. I need true friendship. If Jesus could surround himself with friends, what makes you think you can go through this life alone? If Jesus needed intercessors around him, What makes you think you can pray all by yourself? He says, I'm overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. I showed you examples of many men of God, many heads of state, and here is the ultimate Son of God going through this protracted sorrow. But why did Jesus go through sorrow? The Bible is clear. To empathize with us. What's empathy? To go through all the feelings we go through. That's basically what empathy is all about. Empathy is putting yourself in another person's shoes. He stepped down to feel us. The Bible says in Hebrews 4:15, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we. Yet he did not sin. He never complained because of his protracted sorrow. He never cursed God. He never cursed men who rejected and despised him. Can I ask you a question? Let's get real here. What would happen today if a president like Trump or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or the incumbent Joe Biden on corruption grounds was raised on a long tree, naked, only wearing the underwear, raised up there, beaten, spat on, cursed? And Africans and Americans are very good in cursing. Raised on a tree at Washington, D.C. And then we call CNN and all the major media houses to see this guy in an underwear up on a tree. What a shame. On corruption grounds. But now think about someone greater than a president. Raised on a tree like a snake for no sin he had done. If anyone was humiliated and shamed and despised, it was Jesus. But never forget this. They raised him naked to cover your shame. He was rejected that you may never be rejected. He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you, even to the end of the age. He became a curse, cursed of God, that you may become blessed of God. He who is eternally blessed, he who is the source of blessing, became a curse that you may be blessed. He who is sinless, Zacchaean, faultless, became sin that we may become the righteousness of God. He who is the source of life, the life and the resurrection, died that we may live. I wanted to say this. He was distressed to procure your peace. Yes, by his distress, we have our peace. By his sin offering, we have our righteousness. He was raised completely in poverty that we may be rich. In nakedness, to cover our shame. In weakness, to give us strength. So if Jesus could go through this kind of sorrow, then I guarantee you, you will not escape it. And that's why I like what the doctor was telling you. You could have been well last week, but that's not this week. This test was to provoke you to keep doing it time and again. It's not a one-off exercise. The same way you go for your physicals and doctors check your vitals. They want to check your body temperature, your weight. They want to check your pressure. That's what we are proposing today. Keep checking your mental vitals. Let's not spiritualize issues, because the Bible does not spiritualize issues. It says openly how men of God battled depression. Corrie ten Boom, a Dutch woman who preached all over the world, was caught up in the Nazis' chambers. She watched her entire family go into flames in the gas chambers of Adolf Hitler. Imagine losing your entire family before your sight. She miraculously escaped, and she was able to live up to her 91st birthday. Amazingly enough, she died the same day she was born. Her birthday and death date were the same. How did she cope with such extreme pain, losing your whole family in the gas chambers? She says, and I quote, "If you look at the world, you'll be distressed. If you look within, you'll be depressed. If you look at Christ, you will be at rest. Christ is our resting ground. He made a public invitation. Come unto me, all ye who are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Rest to your souls. Matthew 11:28 and 29. And the word soul here means the first part and the second part, both your mind and your heart, both your logic and your feelings, both your reasoning and your emotions. I'll give you rest, rest to your souls.
Were you blessed by this message? Are you blessed by my ministry? I would like to invite you to be my ministry partner by sending me your love offering every month. I've shared with you the giving options on the screen. Help me to spread the gospel around the world. And remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to hit the bell to get notified whenever I upload new videos. And if you're visiting the Atlanta metropolis or you live around Atlanta area, welcome to Family Church, 287 Mount Calvary Road, Marietta, Georgia.